Good morning, everybody. Renee here again in Israel for today's daily video devo. You know, in Israel this year, they had so much rain that the wildflowers are in a true super bloom, especially mustard plants. You can see all around me and in fields all across Israel, sometimes as far as the eye can see. There's the yellow mustard flowers, and I think the prevalence of mustard seed here must have been one of the reasons Jesus made it a part of a couple of his parables. For example, he said to his disciples that they had such little faith, but he didn't mean that they had to have a truckload of faith. He says to them, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, and I mean, if you look inside of these mustard plants, they're seeds right there. They're just so tiny. And Jesus says, if you have faith that small, then you can move mountains. You know, virtually nothing will be impossible for you. And I've always wondered, what does he mean? I mean, doesn't the amount of our faith matter? Well, yes and no. I think what Jesus is saying is, when it comes to your salvation, when it comes to what Jesus can do in your life, it's not the amount of faith that matters. It's just whether you have enough faith to place your trust in him, because he then does all the rest by his grace. Let me give you an example. Let's say that there's two people boarding an airplane. One is afraid of flying. They're so afraid of flying that they barely have enough faith to get on that aircraft. And then there's a second person right behind them, and that person is supremely confident in the science and the physics of flying. They're totally relaxed about it, and they get on the plane too. So one of them has a lot of faith in flying. The other barely has enough to get on, but that airplane that the two of them are on is going to get both of them to their destination at the exact same time. The amount of their faith doesn't matter when it comes to the plane's power to get them to their destination. It doesn't change the plane's power at all. It's not the amount of their faith, it's the object of their faith. And I think that's what Jesus means when he says, listen, if you have faith as small as a grain of mustard seed in me, then amazing things can happen in your life. Just have enough faith to get on the plane, so to speak. However, the amount of your faith does matter in one way. Do you remember Jesus says to the disciples when they're afraid here on the Sea of Galilee, which you see behind me, in a storm, and he says to them that they have little faith and that's why they fear. Let's go back to that parable of the two people on the airplane. One person has a ton of faith in flying, another person's afraid of flying. That plane has the same amount of power for both of them. They're both going to get to the destination, but the amount of their faith in flying will determine the experience of their flight. One of them is going to be completely relaxed and serene, while the other one's going to be anxious and stressed out the entire time. So while the amount of your faith doesn't matter when it comes to the power of God to affect salvation in your life, it does affect the quality of the ride. And so what I want to suggest to you is, first of all, if you haven't placed your trust in Jesus, do you have just enough faith to give it a try? Then that's faith like the grain of a mustard seed. Get on board that plane. Secondly, if you have kind of a fear of flying, so to speak, when it comes to following Jesus, do everything you can to nurture your faith and trust in him, because that's going to change the experience of the plane ride. That's going to change your experience of life. I hope that makes sense for you. God bless you. Do things that nurture your faith instead of nurturing your fear today. Have a good one.